Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where we talk about how technology is changing our present and future for the better, but in a language that everyone can understand. And that way, I hope we can increase adoption and bring everyone along for the ride. And looking back, I was quite late to the crypto party. I think it was around 2016 that I first started getting interested. But one company that stood out back then to me was called SIA. And today, I want to explore the story behind the company, the journey that they've been on, and also learn more about Skynet Labs. So today's guest is David Vorick, who is the co-founder and lead developer of SIA, which is a decentralized cloud storage network that ultimately allows its users to have more control over their data, which also sparks another conversation for me, and that is the future of data ownership, the perils of everything being owned by corporations now. But today, we'll focus on the solution rather than the problem and learn more about the ability of blockchain and other decentralized technologies that could give us back control over our own lives. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Paris, where David is meeting me for a conversation about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, great to be here today. My name is David Vorick, and I am the CEO and lead developer of a decentralized cloud platform called Skynet. And the problem that we're trying to tackle is one of data ownership. So you have these platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and Snapchat and Twitter, where users spend all this time putting work into the application. You know, you find people you like, you subscribe to them, you follow them, you make tweets, you build the social graph, and then all that juicy, valuable data is controlled by Facebook, or it's controlled by Google. And so we want to make a world or an internet where all the same things can happen. You have your data available to everyone. So you can build, a social media platform like Facebook, except instead of that friend graph being only available on Facebook, any application can make use of it. And instead of, for example, Facebook's been doing this thing where, it's shared messenger between Facebook and Instagram, and I think WhatsApp soon. You could just have shared messenger between every single application. And we think it's a much healthier and user-oriented way of building the internet.
Incredibly cool. And I think I should point out as well, of course, that you are the co-founder and lead developer of SIA, which is a decentralized cloud storage network that ultimately allows its users to have more control over their data. But before we go there, I want to try and take you back in time. I mean, can you remember where your love of tech came from? What put you on this path you're on today? Or in more geeky terms, what is your origin story?
So honestly, I've been playing with computers for as long as I remember. My mom has stories of me being like 2 years old and wiping the hard drive of the family computer. So that was a fun moment for her. I don't really remember it. I've been messing around with HTML since I was like 10 and JavaScript since I was like 12. So it's really been programming and computers, and I kind of just grew up on the internet. And so tech has always been, especially internet tech, has always just been second nature to me.
And as someone that has been active in the Bitcoin and larger crypto space since 2011, I'm curious, what changes have you seen in the space since those days? And also, do you have any stories of buying pizza with 300 BTC or something like that?
I remember one. I competed in a StarCraft tournament where I believe the first place prize was $50, 50 USD, and then the second place prize was 250 Bitcoins. Wow. And unfortunately, I did not win either. But I do remember playing.
And how much have you seen change over the years? Are you seeing a lot more adoption and corporate money coming into the game now?
Yeah, I remember, kind of the first year that corporations showed up was like 2016. And so, all the way up through like 2015, everything was like Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. And then once corporations started to get involved, they were like, blockchain, not Bitcoin. And you had all of these private chains and all of this, like, we'll set up blockchain infrastructure, but it'll just be our corporation, which is kind of missing the point. But then maybe around 2018, 2019, that sort of sentiment died out. And now corporations are fully embracing the decentralization. They're not talking about blockchain as much as they are cryptocurrency and smart contracts. And so I think, more recently it shifted, again, not necessarily back to Bitcoin, but back to crypto. And there's a lot of focus on Ethereum and Ethereum killers. And I do think that especially 2021, it feels like we're rounding this corner where a lot of the hype and a lot of the things we've been dreaming about, like, oh, you could do XYZ with this technology if you built it out enough. We've built it out enough, and we're starting to be able to meet the needs of everyday people without necessarily like getting in their face about the fact that they're using crypto. And so it's starting to make a lot of behind the scenes technology run a lot more smoothly, and certain things are a lot more scalable now. And I think that's fantastic. I think crypto has really evolved into, back in 2011, what we were all like dreaming about, and what got us excited in 2011 is what's finally happening this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And here in 2021, of course, it often feels like just about anything and everything is owned by a large corporation, but there seems to be an increasing excitement about the ability of blockchain or other decentralized technologies to try and give that control back over our own lives. But is that something you can expand on, and what excites you about that?
If I had to pick one word to describe the situation today, I would say like suffocation. I remember, especially back when I was in high school, it was like every little internet community was run on its own server. You had a bunch of diverse forums, and there weren't these like top-down corporate admins saying, saying what types of things could be said or could be shared, or, what a platform's suitable for. It was like the rules of a community were all entirely between, the admins and the community members. There was no like faceless corporate overlord restricting you. And now everything's moved from these open forums to like Reddit and Discord and Facebook. And pretty much like every second that we spend on the web is inside of this silo built by a corporation that just wants to control what we can do, and we don't really have a say in it. And then there's also this like secondary effect where you may remember in like 2000 or 2005, 2010-ish, there were a lot of startups building on top of the APIs provided by Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. And so, Facebook had all of this rich data, and it would just freely expose it to people who wanted to build applications like, I think Farmville is one of the major examples. And then at some point, Facebook realized that giving this data away was actually impacting their ability to turn a profit. So they like locked it all down. They killed a whole bunch of innovation overnight, and like, hundreds of startups died overnight. And all of this exciting technology just failed, and we really want to bring that back. I do believe that by locking down the data the way that the current internet works, we've just completely stalled out, and that's why you haven't seen a better Facebook. That's why you haven't seen a better Twitter. You haven't seen a better LinkedIn, is because nobody can get the data they need to build a reasonable critical mass and become a competitor. And so what we want to do at Skynet is reopen the world, have all this data be freely available to entrepreneurs and to users, and let users own their own data. And then I think that we'll see a new burst of innovation, and the internet will kind of return to how it felt in 2010.
I think suffocation is such a great way of describing that. And I think a lot of people are feeling that all over the world at the moment. And I am conscious, though, there will be a lot of people listening that are outside of the crypto and blockchain space. So for those people, can you tell me a little bit more about the benefits of decentralized and a free internet, and really why it is more important than ever?
Yeah, I mean the major thing about decentralization is open access. It you don't need, with in the case of money, you don't need to sign up with PayPal. You don't need PayPal to say, okay, this person is acceptable. Instead, you can just generate an address and just participate. And so everything on the centralized web, somewhere there's, if you make a Google account, Google at any time can decide to ban your account, or Google at any time can decide, okay, well, if you want to read your email, you also have to watch ads first, or they can inject ads into your email. And we've seen that with Facebook, I think, has been one of the worst about this in terms of supplying ads, manipulating your feed. They're continuously changing their terms of service. Every time it's for the worse, but we all feel like we're kind of hostage to Facebook, because it's like, if I don't log into my Facebook, I can't talk to my extended family, right? It's like Facebook is demanding that I give them my data and my attention so that I can talk to my extended family. And so decentralization is important because it completely removes Facebook from the equation, and it gives the users the ability to say, no, we don't want to share this data with someone else. We don't want to watch advertisements. Like, we just want to connect with our family. And decentralization is important because it allows us to do these things without having to go through this controller that is not, the controllers of the centralized web are not acting in our best interest. They're trying to make money.
And for people that are hearing about SIA and Skynet Labs for the very first time, could you possibly set the scene and tell them about the kind of problems that you set out to solve, and maybe just reveal a little bit more about the relationship between the two as well?
Yeah. So when we got started with SIA, we were looking at Bitcoin and saying, okay, so with Bitcoin, you can make money without a central bank. And can we take the same technology and make a cloud without a central cloud provider? And so, back in the early days, we were really targeting things like iCloud and Dropbox. We're like, I wanted to have my own personal Dropbox, but I didn't want this foreign company that I don't trust and don't like to have control over all of my data and to know all of my activity. And so SIA was originally very focused on just cloud storage. And as the project grew and evolved, we realized that if we wanted people to use it, we needed to make it as convenient and as powerful as the centralized web. So we kind of expanded the focus from cloud storage to just general cloud. And when we expanded that focus, this happened in 2019, we rebranded to Skynet. However, it is the same underlying technology. So every time that you're storing data on Skynet, you create a Skynet account, you log in. All of that is performing transactions on the SIA blockchain. You're interacting with the SIA blockchain, and so the two things are very, very tightly related. Our team works both on Skynet specific code and then also on the general SIA blockchain code. And I think that both are a requirement, as far as I can tell, to complete this vision of a decentralized web.
And a question I'm sure you get a lot, the name Skynet, is it an almost ironic nod to the Skynet from the Terminator movies because you're doing the complete opposite? Is there a story there?
Yeah, there were really two ideas that I had behind the Skynet name. The first is that I really think that as Skynet gains traction, there's going to be a big fight from the centralized cloud providers. I mean, we're already seeing it with Google. Google just yesterday sent a notice to our team that said, this IP address is acting up. And then they didn't give us the reason. They just said, fix it. And so they pointed to our server and they're like, this server needs to be taken off of the web, but they wouldn't tell us why. And I think that's going to ramp up substantially more as we start to take the data back. There's going to be a war between Facebook and YouTube and Twitch over the escaping of data to the decentralized web. When data escapes to an open space, that's very bad for the centralized giants because the closedness of data is how they make all their money. And so I wanted a name that was very aggressive and that would make people feel like fighters. And so we call our community the Terminators because I think that when push comes to shove, it's going to be you're going to have to make difficult life decisions in order to see through the vision of the Skynet network. And then the other thing is that I also kind of wanted it to be a little bit of a warning, because decentralized technology is not something you can shut down. It's a little bit of a Pandora's box. So it's also kind of like, make sure you do it in the right way. If we just, if we're too reckless about bringing decentralization to the world, and something happens that we don't like, it's not necessarily obvious that we'll be able to claw it back. So those are kind of the two elements of the name that I really like.
Love that. What a great story as well. And if I was to ask you to take a glimpse into the virtual crystal ball that we've got here, what do you think the future of data ownership will look like? And more excitingly, what role do you think SIA and Skynet Labs will play in that future too?
Yeah, so I really do think that the future of data ownership is going to be every person owning their own data, and that the data is going to be locked into this open state. And the reason I believe that is because when data is open and freely available to everyone, including other entrepreneurs who have ideas of things to do with that data, it's just so much more powerful. And so to give you an example, if let's say that you have an idea of how to make a better YouTube, and you're correct, you can actually code up a substantially better version of YouTube. If you launch that today on the centralized web, when it launches, you have 0 users, 0 content creators, like 0 videos, 0 comments. You have no data on who likes what types of videos. And so you have to start from scratch. You have this massive, massive disadvantage. And so your very good idea is almost dead in the water to begin with, because you're going to need $100 million of funding just to bootstrap it, just to bootstrap your idea. But on the decentralized web, when data is open, it would be possible on day one, when you launch the platform, before anyone has ever even heard about it, you have all the videos, all the content creators, all the comments. You know what videos people like and don't like. And so that data is open. You can pull it into your platform, and you can give people a better YouTube from day one. So I think there's this little hump that we have to get over, or maybe a big hump that we have to get over, where we pull a bunch of data onto the decentralized web. But once that data is there, I think it becomes completely unstoppable, because an open world can innovate so much more rapidly than the closed ecosystems of the 2021 internet.
I love what you're doing here and how you're tackling and going head to head with big tech and those closed ecosystems. But I'm curious, what are the biggest challenges of competing with the likes of, let's say, Amazon Web Services?
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, some of the challenge is just the brand and the reputation, right? Everyone's like, AWS doesn't fail, it doesn't go down. And even though it's really expensive, it's something that people rely on. And then the other challenge that we keep running into is, as an open data platform, we deal with a lot of malware and copyright violations. And a lot of times, like in the case with Google asking our hosting providers to take our servers offline, a lot of times we don't even know what's going on that is unfavorable. And so, yeah, I'd say the biggest like day-to-day challenge, honestly, is just making things like the Chrome web browser happy, so it doesn't display warnings to our users that says, "Oh, don't go to this website." That's something that we've spent a ton of time trying to combat, and it just keeps coming back to us.
And I'm conscious we have spent a lot of time together today setting the scene, trying to increase adoption and educating users of all the great work that you're doing. But I'm also conscious there will be loyal members of your communities across Reddit and Telegram, etc., that will be tuning in and just hoping for an update or maybe a slight teaser. And I realise you probably can't share too much, but is there anything you can reveal about the road ahead for you guys?
The biggest thing that we've been kind of working on behind the scenes is a way to monetize people on Skynet. So the way Web 2 monetization works is you display advertising. And so when you show advertisements to users, the content creators or the website builders get money. And I think that there's a much healthier way to monetize an ecosystem that is sort of like Patreon, but it has this crypto flair to it. It's almost like investing rather than having every creator just have a Patreon page where you pay them and then maybe you get access to like a small amount of extra content. You can actually buy a token from them, and then the same thing happens where that money goes to them. It supports the channel, and the real reason you're doing it is because you like them, but it also gives you a chance to, if that channel grows substantially, to make some money yourself for being early. And so that's kind of one of the things that we're really focused on is like, how can we make it fun to pay someone that you like their content? How can we make it fun to pay them $100? How can we make it so that you feel better after you pay them than you did before you paid them? Even though the money is gone, you're like, yes, I'm doing a really good thing. And I think we have some fun solutions to that, and our team is really excited about the direction that this Skynet monetization took.
Oh, intrigued. I'll be following that very closely on where it's heading. Now, before I let you go, we did start today's conversation talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. Now, a question I always like to ask my guests before they leave is there a particular song or piece of music that has helped them in the past, or maybe just helped you in your career, get your head in the zone before going on stage? Is there a particular song that has accompanied you on your journey that we can add to our Spotify playlist?
Yeah, it's not that easy to spell, but so there's a lot of Beat Saber soundtracks that I use to kind of get into the zone. And so there's one called, I'll type it into the chat so you can link it. It's called Oni Ken Bai, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's just this really, really high energy EDM music that when I need to like bump myself up and get motivated and feel like, we're going to take over the world, that's the song that I listen to get into like a high energy state.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to listening to that. I'll be checking that out as soon as we finish this episode. But before I let you go, for anyone listening want to find out more about SIA, Skynet Labs, and your communities, and ask questions and all those kind of things, what's the best starting point?
Yeah, so the best starting point to read would be siasky.net. From there are links to our blogs, there's link to documentation, and of course links to our Discord. And from a community perspective, by far the most like active and exciting place in Skynet is the Discord. So it's discord.gg/Skynet Labs. I'll type that into the chat as well.
Fantastic. I'll have those links so people can find you nice and easy. So much I've loved chatting with you today. You did mention the word suffocation early on. That's really struck a chord with me because I think that will resonate with so many people listening. But exploring the future of data ownership, the perils of everything being owned by those large corporations, but the hope of that ability of blockchain and other decentralized technologies to give us control back over our lives. That is the exciting part for me. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing that and your personal story as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a huge pleasure to be here.
I love David's story and mission to build a future where people are not vulnerable to the arbitrary deplatforming decisions of megacorps and random advertisers, and anyone that spends any amount of time online will know all about that. And if anyone dares say anything against a particular narrative, you're locked out of the game. And for me, that is what it's all about. It's not about Lambos and trips to the moon, but removing the suffocation that we all feel from time to time. That gift is priceless. It's better than a Lambo, isn't it? Or is it? Maybe we could have both. But over to you, please. I want to hear your stories, insights, questions, pictures to come on the show, and anything at all that springs to mind. You can get hold of me at LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram at Neil C. Hughes, and you can email me directly, techblogwriter@outlook.com. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did, and I invite you all to join me again tomorrow, where we'll explore a completely different technology and industry, and I have a guest already lined up for you all. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.